All right, time for lesson 8.1, converting metric units of length. Your I can statement, I can convert metric units of length. So go ahead and jot that down and we'll get started. All right, so this should be review for you. Metric units of length, when we talk about them in length, we're talking about meters. Now you see there's a box around the word meter here, okay? The unit can change depending on what we're talking about. Because we're talking about length, it's meter. If we're talking about the weight of something, it would be a gram. If we're talking about capacity, in other words, volume, how much fits inside something, that's going to end up being liter. So we're going to start to work through this. So let's look at the right-hand side of the units of length here. As I move from meter to decimeter, each unit is 10 times smaller or divided by 10. Okay, so when I move from a meter to a decimeter, it means there's 10 of those that make up a meter. Okay, so it would take 10 decimeters to equal 1 meter. Okay, for centimeters, it takes 100 of those, or 10 times 10. It's 10 times 10 smaller, and you'll see some steps later that we'll take a look at that'll make that even clearer. So 100 centimeters equals a meter here. And if I move all the way down to millimeters, it takes 1,000 millimeters to equal 1 meter. Let's look at the other side. Moving up the scale to the left side here, you're going to see that each one of these now becomes bigger. So I go from decimeter being 10 times smaller to decameter, which is 10 times larger. So it would take 10 meters to equal a decimeter or decameter. It takes 100 meters to equal a hectometer, and it takes 1,000 meters to equal a kilometer. That'd be like taking those meter sticks that are in the classroom, laying 1,000 of them end to end to equal a kilometer. So that's a lot. Okay, so there's a little metric anagram. I went through this last year with some kids, and they found it helpful. So let's take a look at it. Okay, the anagram goes like this: King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. Okay, and each one of those stands for something. So K for king is kilo, Henry is hecto, died is deca, and then unexpectedly is our unit here. Okay, and in this case it could be gram, meter, or liter, but since we're dealing with measurement of length, that's going to be meter. Okay, drinking is deci, chocolate is centi, and milk is milli. So King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk is a way to think about the order of the steps that we take a look at. All right. So I'm going to show you some metric conversion steps. Found these to be very, very helpful. What I'm going to ask you to do with the metric conversion steps is I'm going to have you write these down in your math notebook. Okay. So first of all, here's our metric units. So whenever we're dealing with weight, we're dealing with gram. Liter is for capacity or volume. And then length is going to be meter. Okay. So here are the steps that I would like you to write down in your math notebook. Now you all have lined paper in your math notebook, so just use the horizontal lines for each step and then just draw a little thing down here. Now if you want to write kilometer and then write down, or kilometer, they're pronounced both ways, and then write down the abbreviation here that's in parentheses as well. Now you'll see that I have a different color at the end because these are all meters. Okay, if they were liters, this is the part that would get changed. The prefix kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, and milli stay the same. Okay, so that's nice to know that those don't change. It's really just the suffix or the ending that's going to change here. Okay, so when you use the steps, all right, the longest measurement is at the top of the steps and the shortest one is at the bottom. Okay, and as you move to the right, or as I go down the stairs, bing, 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 down the stairs. Okay, I multiply the number for times 10, or I can move my decimal place one spot to the right, and I do this for every step I go down. So if I go from here to here, I'm going to multiply by 10. If I go from here to here, I'm going to multiply by another 10. So from kilometers down to decameters, this is 100 times bigger because this is 10 times bigger times 10 times bigger, and you're going to see that as we go through this. Okay, so just a quick question: which is longer, a centimeter or a meter? Look at where they are positioned here. Okay, when you look at that, it's pretty obvious that the meter is longer than a centimeter. Okay, it takes more centimeters to equal a meter. Okay, a meter is a bigger unit of measurement. Okay, meters up here, centimeters down here. The further I go up the steps, the longer the unit, or the longer the measurement becomes. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. All right. Which is shorter, a hectometer or a meter? Well, hectometer's up here near the top. Can't get my mouse to work. Come on, mouse. and we've got meter down here, so the meter would be shorter than a hectometer, okay? If I have 1 hectometer and I have 1 meter, hectometer is going to be 100 times bigger because I'm going up 2 steps, okay? This is going to be 100 times bigger, okay, than a meter. In other words, it's going to take 100 meters to equal this, all right? Now, it'll make even a lot more sense when we take a look at this in terms of using real numbers, all right? Let's take a look at one more thing before we get to that. Here's a take a look at those 2 spots that we looked at on our steps, and that is converting, okay, 4.5 kilometers to meters. Okay, I'm going to remember where the longest and shortest are. Okay, so now as I move down the steps, okay, I'm going to start with 4.5 kilometers. Okay, as I move to the first step, I'm going to multiply that times 10. Okay, so I take 4.5 times 10, and when I do that, I get 45. Okay. That happens by, if you see right here, I can move that decimal place 1 spot to the right. So I move it to the right 1 spot when I move down this step, and that equals 45. Okay. Now my decimal is essentially at the end of this number, but since I'm already at the end and it's now completely a whole number, not a decimal number, as I move down the next step, I can just start adding zeros to the end. Okay. So if I move down from hectometer to decameter, multiply that times 10, I get 450. As I move from decameter to meter, I multiply that times 10 and I get 4,500. So it takes 4,500 meters to equal 4.5 kilometers. All right, now let's take a look at converting 580 millimeters up 2 meters, okay? As you go up or move to the left on those steps, you divide by 10, so it's the exact opposite, okay? Or you move your decimal spot 1 place to the left each time you move up, okay? So if I start with 580 millimeters, okay, and I do 580 divided by 10, when I do that, I end up with 58 because I'm going to just chop that 0 off the end. Move up to the next step, I'm going to do 58 now because that's my answer here divided by 10. I'm going to move that decimal spot 1 place over, it's going to be 5.8. Move up to the step after that, I have 5.8. I divide that by 10. I'm going to move that decimal place 1 more time, and I end up with 58 hundredths of a meter. Okay, so let's look at that one more time. So we got 580. I divided by 10. That dropped the 0 off the end. Okay, I divide by 10, and I can remember at the end of any whole number. So I've got 58 here. I can put a decimal point at the end of any whole number. It doesn't change its value. And now I can move that 1 place to the left. That's why this decimal ended up here. And this last one here, now I'm going to move that decimal place 1 more spot to the left. For each step I go up, I move that decimal place 1 place to the left. And that's how I ended up with 58 hundredths. So 580 millimeters equals 58 hundredths of a meter. All right. So let's take a look at one more, okay, and I've kind of put the whole steps here, and these should already be copied down in your book as we mentioned earlier, okay. So if I want to convert 15 meters to millimeters, okay, means I'm going to put 15 on my meter step. I'm going to multiply 15 times 10 as I move down to the decimeter step, that's 150. I'm going to move down another step, 150 times 10 is 1,500. 1,500 times 10 is going to be 15,000, which I'm going to have in millimeters. Okay, so when I convert meters to millimeters, it takes 15,000. Now that makes sense because every meter stick has 1,000 millimeters, and if you're ever really bored one day, you can get a meter stick down. You can start counting all those little itty bitty black lines that are all the way from one side to the other. Okay, there's 1,000 of them there, but you don't have to take my word for it. Feel free to count. Okay. If I've got 15 meter sticks and each one has 1,000 millimeters, it would make sense that it would be 15,000 millimeters. Okay? All right. So here are your practice problems for tonight. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to solve these 2 problems down here. You can use the steps as needed. I've left all the stuff on the page so you have a frame of reference for that. Okay? And you can 877 centimeters equals blank meters. And 67.3 kilometers equals blank meters. So I'd like you to have those copied down and ready to go when we come to class. No guiding question and no problem that you need to create for tonight. And we'll see you soon.